He slammed my door shut and yelled, "You are coming with me." Okay, this happened in 2016 when I was a 17-year-old first-year college student in film school. I'm now 22, female. My name is Julia. I lived alone in my first ever apartment. It was really small, but I was really proud of my independence. I never felt unsafe in this apartment for several reasons. There were multiple gates in the residence that needed to be opened through a code only the people that lived there knew. My door had 3 different locks, and it was right next to the university, so most people who lived in the neighborhood were college students. Nothing bad had ever happened in the neighborhood before, though. I've always been very careful with locking doors when I leave my room. I always check twice. I have slight OCD. So this one time, I leave to go to class and lock my door, but for some reason I couldn't get the key out of the lock. It was completely stuck, so when I went to get the caretaker of the building to help me, but he wasn't there, and I was getting late for class. So I went to class with the key still in the lock. I took off the keychain first, so it's not that noticeable. When I got home, the caretaker was back, so he came to help me, and we couldn't get it out for 15 minutes until somehow he did. He told me the lock was damaged, but that I didn't necessarily need to change it if I only locked it once instead of twice. I just said okay, and that was the end of that. I really wasn't worried because of how safe I felt in this building. Well, flash forward 2 months later, I was taking out the trash one night around 11 p.m. While on the phone with my sister, I remember telling her that I was taking out the trash, then that I would take a shower afterwards before heading to a party. As previously stated, I always lock the door, even just to take out the trash. Because of my lock being damaged, I only locked it once. So when I got back to my apartment, I found the door unlocked, which immediately alarmed me. So I went into the apartment and locked the door immediately with 3 different types of locks. When you walk into my apartment, which is just 215 square feet, you have the main room in the front of you and the bathroom door immediately to your left. I had left the bathroom door slightly open enough so I could see a man in my shower, turning his back to me. Naturally, when I saw this, I tried to open the door and leave as fast as possible, except my main lock was damaged from 2 months earlier and I couldn't open it no matter how hard I tried. In this moment, all I could think of was the fact that I had to leave as fast as possible. I jumped out the window without really thinking. I figured that was my only solution, except I lived on the 2nd floor, so I completely smashed my ankles on the landing. I started running in whichever way I could, and when I got a little bit further from the building, I looked back and the man was there at my window, watching me run away. I thought of 2 possible outcomes. Either the man was going to jump and chase me, except I wouldn't get far with my twisted ankle, or he would get scared of the heights and be locked in my apartment. Thankfully, he picked option 2. I went to hide in a bush a little further and I called the police, who arrived in just about 10 minutes because I lived close to the station. They pushed my door open and the man was in there just sitting on my couch, holding a kitchen knife, waiting for me to come back. Like he didn't think I would call the police. They arrested the guy, and that he had already been arrested for things such as sexual assault, rape, attempted kidnapping, and attempted murder. They also told me how everything had happened. Like I said, it was a very friendly neighborhood with mostly college students, so he got inside the building by other people holding the door for him. He then heard me telling my sister I was going to take a shower, which is why he was waiting in the bathroom for me. He crocheted my lock when I was taking out the trash, He apparently noticed me on school campus and followed me to my home several times before succeeding to actually come in. He stayed inside waiting for me because I had recently changed my phone and the previous one was still on the table, so he thought I didn't have a phone with me to call the police. I don't live there anymore, but after that, to get into the building, we all needed identification proving that we had lived there. Building IDs were created and we had to scan them everywhere, and it was the only way to go inside the building. Nothing bad ever happened in the neighborhood after that, and fortunately, it is back to being very peaceful and friendly. So to the guy waiting for the police in my apartment with the kitchen knife, let's not meet. Context: I was 26 and I'm a lady. I needed gas and it was around 11 p.m. on a Saturday. I pulled into a busy gas station to fill my tank, except it was completely bare, with not a car in sight. I also live in Alaska and it was very cold this night, maybe 10 below freezing degrees. Tired after work, just wanted to get home usually. Usually I start my pump and I sit in my car due to the freezing cold, but this time, I had a weird feeling that I needed to stand by the pump. So I did. I just started pumping my gas when a little golden sedan pulled up right next to me. A guy got out and I was feeling hypervigilant for some reason. He started cleaning his completely clean windows. As he put back the squeegee, he started towards me. I felt like I wanted to run, but stayed calm and continued pumping. He asked me if I would help him put windshield wiper fluid in his car because he ran out and he doesn't know how to open the hood. I laughed it off and I told him I don't know how to install it either, which was a lie. He kept getting closer and closer to me while trying to lure me into his car by saying there's something under his seat he can't reach because he's too big. Now, I'm 5'2" and petite. This man was large and scruffy. Think Alaska wilderness dude. At this point, I'm freaking out and hit the car call button on the pump. He took a step back and started to get back in his car. I thought I was being smart. My gas was almost done. I looked in his car and I noticed the insides of the doors had no handles except for the driver door. That freaked me out. I was putting the pump back and opening my door and he was right behind me. He slammed my door shut and yelled, "You are coming with me." Obviously I refused and I was petrified. He grabbed my arm and slammed me against the car. I embowled him as hard as I could and started to scream at the top of my lungs. Thank God for the gas attendant with the big gun that night, because if not for him, I don't know what would have happened. The attendant pulled the video and we made a police report. I called them immediately after that and the guy took off. I never heard anything else about it. I just hope he didn't get some other lone girl. So to the guy with no door handles, let's not meet. Back in the mid-late 80s, just before my mom and my dad had met, my mom was working in a mall in Plymouth, Wisconsin, where she grew up. Nothing about that mall was sketchy or wrong, but it was just not the nostalgia-filled malls you see on TV today. It was a normal mall, and one day she had met a man. This man was charming, good-looking, and seemed friendly enough. So she was surprised when he asked her out for a date. The date, to her, was normal enough, but she didn't see anything special happening, and she didn't feel right about it. Needless to say, she decided to not give him a second chance on a second date. Well, after that, life went on. My mom and dad met, they got married, and so on and so forth. Well, In the early 90s, I don't remember specifically what year, she got pregnant with my oldest sibling. And she was watching the news one day while waiting for my dad to get home from work when she noticed something odd about this man that was arrested. She realized it was the man she went on a date with years prior. The man in question was Jeffrey Dahmer, who had been serial killing and eating several boys and men during the time of their meeting. I'm sure this bothered her at the time. Ever since I've heard the story, my brother's mom and I all joke about it. Even though it may not have been an appropriate thing to joke about, I don't think either of them back then thought the relationship would go any further. But I don't like to think of how much danger she could have been in if she had dated him long term. My mom met a serial killer. Who knows how things would have turned out. If events had transpired a little differently. And this is a story that happened many years ago, when I was around 8 or 9. I am now 43 and female. My parents and I lived in a very beautiful, big old house that used to be a hotel in the 19th century. The house had 4 extra apartments, and in one of them lived this middle-aged guy who we'll call Fred. The house was placed on a very small but long road that went between fields and a small forest, all of it going downhill, before it ended right by the beach. There was maybe 15 houses and only one other kid my age, so I would sometimes visit with the adults in the area. There was a few incidents with Fred, the guy that rented one of the apartments. The first one happened when my friends and I were roller skating when I met Fred, who was out on his bicycle. We asked him if he could tow us because we were tired, and he let us hold on to his bike. And at first we thought it was great because not all adults would have been okay with that idea. But the ride didn't go so well. Once we held onto the bike, he started going faster and faster, and I mean really fast. It was summertime and we only had on shorts and skirts, and back then we didn't have a lot of protective gear, so we absolutely did not want to fall down. We started out by politely asking him to go slower, but he didn't listen at all. Then we started getting near a really big hill where gravity would always make you go way too fast. So there we would always zigzag our way down to make it down safely. At this point, we were screaming at him to stop, but he did the opposite and was standing up on the bike so he could go even faster. And then he told us to let go of the bicycle if we didn't like it. But there was no way we could have done that without falling, and he knew it. Even if he didn't know, he could clearly hear the fear in our voices. But he didn't stop before we were a good bit past the hill. And when we confronted him afterwards, he just said he only did what we wanted him to, and that it's our own fault. The second incident is the real creepy encounter that I just had with this guy, but at the time I just thought it was a bit weird. My mother, on the other hand, got really mad, and as an adult, I now understand why. I had met Fred in the driveway, and he had invited me to go up to get a cup of tea. I remember sitting on his couch and not liking the tea because it had no sugar. And when I asked for some, he refused to give me any. Maybe he said he didn't have any, but anyway, I didn't like the tea. And he kind of forced me to drink it anyway, saying how I was the one who wanted it, and now he went through the trouble of making it, and so on. He got kind of mad, So I did what he told me to do because he was an adult and I was only a child. That evening, I told my mom, and she right away took the phone and called him. And then she yelled at him for endangering us girls when we were roller skating, and got even more angry when she told him to never ever invite me into his apartment again, and especially to never force a little girl, her little girl, to do anything whatsoever again. This could have been the end of the story, but no. I actually met another guy around 10 years later, and he had told me that Fred had informed him that I was the kind of girl that just needed to be cornered and pressured a bit, and then I would put out. Wow, that is truly sick. Thank you for listening, and Fred, let's never meet again.